Right. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to Avenel Canto Valley. This is our very first episode, and today's conversation is one I have been looking forward to. And if you can see your screens, you know that I won't be doing this by myself. So I have someone very interesting here with me. And one thing I like to do is leave my guests to introduce themselves because I believe no one tells your story better than you do. So over to you, Mr. Sherry.
Hi, good morning, guys. It's nice to be here for the pilot edition of this podcast, or as you refer it to be. Simple. My name is Sheriff Adebayo. I am a lawyer by profession. I've been practicing law close to 23 years now at the bar. General law practice, real estate, commercial activities. I've been in this for at least 15 to 16 years. Started my law practice at a young age into litigation and criminal law. Then I now metamorphosed into real estate and also commercial transactions. I done virtually everything. I've covered a lot of transactions back and forth, and it's nice to be here. And I hope this will not be the last edition. It will be a lot of editions to come after this.
So thank you
So
very
over
much,
to you.
Mr. All right, so before we get into the work that you do today, I want to know what initially pulled you into real estate law. Was it intentional or did you just find yourself here over time?
So basically, what brought me to commercial law, as I defined earlier, commercial law is something that day to day as a lawyer you have to engage yourself in. It's just about commercial activities, trade, corporate, corporate and finance. So what made me not stumble upon, it's always been there. What gave me interest more in real estate
Right.
practice of law is that I used to work in a law firm. I used to work in a real estate company.
Okay.
We used to do real estate development. Years ago at Oniru, at Yaba, I was the company secretary, and also then I became the head of the legal unit at a very young age. So just after that, I started having interest in commercial and real estate law practices, and that's how I became. Till now, I still practice in that sector, but still, I still want to tell you that I feel that most times, because of what kind of work we do, you always just have to go into commercial law practice, no matter what. Even if you say you're into litigation, or if you are into criminal law, or land law, or labor law, any other law practices you have, you still stumble on commercial activities. There's no lawyer that I know that you will not stumble into commercial activity, commercial law practice.
All right, so you mentioned earlier that you don't consider yourself as a regular day-to-day lawyer, yeah? So I want to know what that's like for you. Like, what does a typical day look like for you when you're actively working on deals? Are you mostly fixing problems or more like preventing them or just structuring things around from scratch?
Okay, so basically, most times the typical day for me is fixing problems. It's because of the kind of practice I do. Apart from even my commercial law, I'm generally the go-to guy when it comes to general law practice. I have people around me that always have issues or situation they need to resolve. As of today, I have been in three different meetings, two scheduled meetings, one unscheduled meeting, and it's been back to back. I had to take a break from this podcast to attend another meeting to try and finalize a real estate transaction. And also, I did another meeting today, not far away in Ikoyi here, to talk about a client of mine that I'm trying to sort out a situation for. So every day, generally, there's always something you have to do.
Yeah.
It's some days it's back to back till late hours. But don't get me wrong, some days are light, but most days of the practice which I engage in, uh, literally busy, busy in work, busy in practice, because where we situate ourselves here in Ikoyi is the hub. You have a lot of real estate transactions going on, commercial transactions. Even if you don't go after them, they come after you. That's how it is. So it's always a very busy day for me.
Right. All right.
And
So,
I try to solve the problems.
okay.
And I'm the kind of person that if you give me a situation, I always try to see what I can do to resolve that situation. And I think I've been doing that for a while now.
All right. So, from your experience so far, what's one moment or one deal that has really shaped how you think about real estate and risk in Nigeria?
Okay. Years ago, there was a transaction as a long lawyer that I took when I used to work with the real estate company. I had the scenario was that a client of mine, so not a client of mine, our company took a joint venture to redevelop a property on Catholic Mission Street. Catholic Mission Street is not far from St. Nicholas Building, and you know that. So we took a lease there, a development lease, whereby we take up a property, we redevelop it, and also own that lease for a period of time till the reversionary interest goes back to the title holder. That's the person that, let me use the word, the landowner. So when we took that transaction, we did our due diligence, we started developing, and suddenly we had other parties come into that transaction claiming that they already have an existing lease, the same lease we had, existing on that same property. So we realized that the clients, that's the family, the title holders, did not do full disclosure to us that they were already tied in a contract with another person. So, and that person came, we had discussions, and we had to look for a way whereby we could see how we could resolve. They already had an existing lease, and we already just joined in that lease. But what they did was that what they didn't do, they didn't register their lease interest. We had registered our lease interest, and upon that, we had to engage and take it to the Lands Bureau, that's Ministry of Lands, which covers all land transactions in Lagos. We took it there, and we had a lot of bottleneck because they felt that the lease has not been extinguished yet. So we found out eventually where I mixed it up with. We found out that the lease was already existing and registered. So, but they never took possession. And what the clauses say in that joint venture, the development lease they had was that you must take possession and build. They never took possession. So we took possession, we entered the property and we commenced the development. So we had to do publication in the newspaper. You know, it was a rigorous time for me as a young lawyer, but eventually we got everything sorted out and we now moved into the property. We developed it, and the rest is history. But it was a very tough decision for us to make at that period, and also was a very rigorous exercise for us. Just one of the scenarios. There are a lot. If I start giving you different scenarios, I'm sure we won't end this interview in the next 2 days.
All right. So, just one more question on getting to know you, right? I want to know if someone had to describe you outside of work, how you think, how you approach problems, what do you think they would say?
Sheriff, they say, "Oh, you have a problem, go to Sheriff. He's a problem solver." We always, I won't say I know it all, and I won't tell anyone that, oh, yes, I can. But most times, some of my colleagues even reach out to me and consult me to, or if you got a situation, call him. So I tend to have a very, how will I put it, a very good working relationship, both on and off work. I like to create relationships. I like to, create bridges. I try not to burn bridges, but at times some bridges can be burnt. It depends on how you take it. So most times people engage me to try and resolve a problem, even not even outside the law scope, or have a situation. What do you think? I'm always looking for a situation out of things for people. So that's the kind of work I do, even when it comes to not my law practice, general life, and how I relate with people.
Okay, interesting. I'm glad to have a problem solver. here with me. All right, so I do have a lineup of questions that I want to ask still. So, from where you sit, do most investors in Nigeria actually understand the legal side of what they are getting into? Or are they mostly focused on just location, price, returns?
Well, predominantly anybody that goes into business in Nigeria looks into returns, vis-a-vis law practice or whatever you are doing, or any investment in real estate. They like to look at the numbers. How much am I putting in? How much am I getting out? And when it comes to real estate, real estate in most cases are long-term investments,
Yeah.
not short-term. For a real estate transaction, the turnaround period for a real estate transactions, proper projects, maybe give yourself 24 months, because there's a waiting time, especially if you are developing. So I'm talking, if you are an investor, you are buying land, redeveloping, or buying a property to resell or to lease. There's always a turnaround period. So most times, most clients like to look at the numbers. They want to think, oh, the numbers are okay. Once the numbers are okay, they go into those kind of transactions. At the end of the day, but most Nigerians, we have above average enlightened people when it comes to going into transactions. Some might not be educated, but they're enlightened. Being educated is different from being enlightened too, in a way. So most times, some people know what they're going into. Some don't know. We have situations whereby clients invest or buy properties. They didn't even do their due diligence. They didn't fall through. But because the numbers were good, and they say, oh, you buy this property today, you invest, let's say, 100 million. In the next 6 months, you're going to get, because Lagos is a commercial city.
Yeah.
Everything keeps evolving, 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 and especially real estate. There's always investment going on. As it is, we still have limited housing. People still want to build more houses. People still want to buy. People want to lease. And that's we find that people always go into real estate transactions. So most times some clients go into those transactions without proper due diligence. And they would have even, turned into a bad corner of the road, and they now call upon us and say, oh, you know what? I just found out that this property had a situation, I'd already invested. So everybody looks at the monetary aspect, which I
Yeah.
don't blame them. That's why I do business. Always monetary. Then after a long while, of a short period, a long period, it depends on the scenario, they now come back and say, oh, there's a problem. And that's why they call people like us to look into it.
All right. I like the fact that you spoke about how some people are enlightened and others aren't. So, what would you say are like some of the areas that investors typically, go wrong when they approach a deal from a legal standpoint? I'm talking those mistakes that you see over and over and over again.
Due diligence, they don't consult for due diligence. That's all. Most times when you find a client that wants to invest in a property, just as I just said in my previous response, they don't they just go into that transaction and they just want to think of the monetary aspect. Just how do I make money? Most times they don't conduct due diligence. Due diligence is to know what the history of the property is, the title document it has, if there's any encumbrance on it, if there's any legal battle on it. Most people just want to invest, and once they do that, they feel that, oh, I'm waiting for my return. But those situations can hamper or determine the growth of that project or the transaction. So that's always the problem. People don't consult for due diligence. That's where we find this. But if we don't get in that situation, how do people like us make money too?
Right. All right. So what you said actually links to my next question, right? So a lot of times we hear terms like CFO, title, like you mentioned, governor's consent and all that, but a lot of people don't really understand that. So can you break down those legal requirements that investors should actually care about in like very simple terms? What are those things
Okay,
they should look out for?
okay. So basically, it's a very important question. And I like that you've touched into that. So when you're talking about title documents for a layman means what are the documents on the property? Vis-a-vis, is it a COO? Is it a deed of assignment with the governor's consent? Is it a registered conveyance? Is it a land certificate, power of attorney, mortgage? There are different title documents that leads to documentation of the property. Why it's so popular? Most people use the word COO, which means certificate of occupancy. Abbreviation is COO, C of O, certificate of occupancy. That is the document issued to you as a landowner. Before the Land Use Act, there were other title documents before the COO, where you had a registered conveyance in some areas, old areas like in Surulere, Mushin, Ebutemeta, old Lagos areas. We had like land certificates, which is popular too in those areas. We have like um, um, some mortgages that you create. So there are different title documents. But because when they started with the Land Use Act, they brought out the certificate of occupancy that every state or every governor must assign a certificate of occupancy. So most times, what people refer to, a client might have a deed of assignment. He doesn't even know. He will say, "Oh, my COO." And I say, "Can I see the document?" Oh, it's not even a COO; it's a deed of assignment. So COO creates title, which is issued by the Lagos State government or any government of that state. The word certificate of occupancy. Any future transactions will be done by a deed of assignment, which will have a governor's consent. So, for instance, they can't issue two COOs on one property. Once there's a COO, if you buy from that COO, you have to be issued a deed of assignment from the title holder that will pass interest and rights to the second party or whoever party purchased.
Right.
Then those ones can issue constant deeds of assignment in previous or transactions as it proceeds. We have the land certificate, which was so why I'm a bit I don't use the word old school. I'm a sticker for land use certificates because of one thing. It gives you freehold interest. Most land certificates gives you freehold interest. Freehold interest means it's not a lease interest. C of O is a lease interest. Every C of O's every COO in the clause there has 99-year lease. It's 99 years for a certificate of occupancy. It's not freehold, it's leasehold. Since the inception of the Land Use Act, the governor of the state is the number one landlord. He owns all the land in the state. And that's the power they've given to the governor.
Mm.
Not so when you say the governor, it might not be personalized as, but the office of the governor.
Right.
So they won't say it's somebody that owns on the land in Lagos. No. But the power they've given the governor in the Land Use Act, that all the land in the state is vested in the governor. It's there in the Land Use Act.
Mm.
So that came right from the COO. Then before then, we had power of attorney. We have registered conveyance. Those are instruments you can transfer interest of land to people in. So there are different methods. We have so the most popular one, COO, deed of assignment. Then you now look at your land certificate. Then you have your registered conveyance, power of attorney. Then there are some that they call excision. It's called when government excises land, especially those lands that are owned by families in especially not Yaba, sorry, Lekki axis, Epe and all that. It's called excision, whereby government acquires some part of their land and gives them a portion of the excision excised to those families. So those ones too, they have existed and which is gazetted in the Lagos State Gazette. So they have excision too. So right at times you go and buy a property in maybe, for instance, Aja or Lekki, Bejuleki is environs. When they ask for the root of title, they say, "Oh, we don't have COO, we have excision." Is gazetted. So we say we have gazette, but an excision is a document that is given to in a gazette that is published by Lagos State government. A gazette is an instrument from Lagos State government issued.
All right. So I like that there's something you said that I want to look a little bit more insight on. You mentioned that the governor was like the number one landlord.
Not the governor. Don't call me, not the
The
governor.
office of the governor, rather.
The
But
office
let's
of the
say the
governor.
government
Yes.
in this case. So
Yes.
my question is,
Is
how much?
the landlord.
Right. My question is, how much
Most people don't know
control
that.
does the government actually have over property here? like in worst case scenario, like what can the state do and what protection does like an investor realistically have?
Well, to be candid, Lagos State government has done a lot in protecting landowners in Lagos State. So, for instance, if you purchase a land under a government scheme, because there are some government schemes, like Magodo is a government scheme, Lekki Phase 1, Lekki Scheme 1. People used to mix that up. There's Lekki Scheme 1, there's Lekki Scheme 2. Lekki Scheme 1, Lekki Scheme 2, Ogudu GRE. Those are government schemes. And most times you find out that all those kind of locations, you hardly have issue of land grabbers or omonile because it's already planned. And once it's planned, there's a sketch, there's a survey plan which you have to work with when you are purchasing that kind of property. So the government protects especially people that have had issues in getting access to their land or their title. What There was a time Lagos State even set up an agency called Land Grabbers something. I can't remember the name of the agency. I'll check online. It's called for land grabbers for where people where the popular word Omoniles come and try to. I'm sure there's nobody in Lagos has not experienced the issue of the mayhem of Omonile before. And they come into that location, they try to take the land by force. There's an agency in Lagos State government that attends to that kind of scenario, whereby you go write a petition there, they do the investigation thoroughly. If parties are found to be, well, the suspects there are found to be wanting the most times arrest, charge them to court, arraignment, So there's a process. They protect, but you must know that you must have a legal title. If, for instance, some people would buy properties without getting proper legal title, legal documentation, and you run to Lagos State, it's hard. They would listen to you as a government, as a responsible government, but their actions might be limited if you don't have a legal title. So most times, if you have a good legal title, Lagos State government protects you from land grabbers or fraudsters or whatsoever. So there's adequate protection.
Right. Okay, so have you ever been in a situation whereby you tell an investor not to touch a particular deal and then they ignored you? And then maybe something goes
Oh,
wrong.
several
So
scenarios
what
happen like
happened?
that. So most times when you maybe they consult you to buy a property,
Right.
and they consult you when they want to purchase, and you do your investigation, your due diligence, you carry out your due diligence, and at the end of it, when you issue a search report, that's what you call a search report, where you issue to a client after you've conducted your due diligence, and you find out that there are encumbrances on it, or if you buy this property, you might have issues, and you advise them against it because of the financial gain or some other parties or other forces in the transaction. They don't they don't take to your advice and they proceed otherwise. They still come back at the end of the day and say, "Oh, yes, you want me. I have now faced the situation. How can you help me?" So it's still the same thing. People just don't conduct proper due diligence. And most times, once it happens, they come back to their lawyers or whoever is representing them to let them know what the situation is all about.
All right. But this next question is one I'm actually very much interested in. It says a lot of investors rely on agents or trusted contacts. Right. So how risky is that and where does the approach usually go wrong?
They rely on agents.
Yeah, they
You
rely
said
on
agents.
agents or maybe the trusted contacts that they have.
Yes, yes. Most people do that entirely. And at times, don't I won't say anything negative. I've bought properties through agents before.
Right.
So it depends on the track record of the agents. There are some agents that they know how to scout for properties, they know the right contacts. But it all depends on the source you're dealing with. You know, normally if you're going to be doing property transaction, you should be dealing with a chartered or an estate surveyor, which is known to law as people that administer over real estate transactions. But sometimes not everybody's an estate surveyor. They'll say agents. And I think Lagos State, I saw something, Lagos State Ministry of Housing or something, has this agency now that they're advising most agents to register on their portal as a registered agent to do transactions. Just like lawyers, we have our NBA seal, so they would want to, register them, document them. So in case there's a situation where an agent also has gone wrong, even if the agent too has been treated unfairly by the client, there'll be a place where that matters like that can be reported to and all that. So most times they've now they're trying to regularize that sector because estate surveyors have their association. They have their association, and if any estate surveyor is found wanting, it can be reported to that association. But a- property agents don't, because you don't really need a certification to become a property agent. There's a time on my phone, I looked through my phone, my friend's former driver, I saw his message. It says, Mr. Sharif, I am now in property transactions, an agent. I said, wow. Don't get me wrong, a driver can aspire. I'm not trying to say no one can aspire to be great. He wasn't born a driver. A driver can aspire. But you look at it that how do you be able to manage that kind of transaction? And he sends me a list. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. So I said, oh, I'm happy for you, but it's not a regularized sector because anyone can pick up the phone and say, I have a property. We're going for sale, sell it, get paid your agency fee and move on. It's a very lucrative transaction. Also a thin line too in that transaction. You can fall in the good, the bad, and the ugly part. It's a trilogy.
All right. So now, when you think of people, sometimes people just assume that once they buy a property, it's fully theirs. So in reality, what are those limitations? What are those obligations that come with owning properties, especially here in Nigeria?
There is a lot. So for instance, if you purchase a property via a CFO, you'll be entitled to that documentation, and there are some rules and regulations you must follow when the CFO is issued,
Okay.
vis-a-vis maybe building um, size, land, area, specific built-up areas. There are some financial implications too. You must also consider when you buy a property, you must pay your land use act. There's a land use, sorry, I said land use act, land use charge. It's a charge given to every property owner that you must pay to Lagos State Ministry of Finance. It's called the land use charge. For instance, if you want to develop a property, you must pay assessment to physical planning. There's some financial implications. Don't think, oh, I have a property, and once I have that property, it's mine. Yes, it's yours. Nobody's robbing you of ownership, but there are some certain statutory payments you must follow during that process of your ownership, except you've sold. And once you've sold, all those rights, privileges, advantages has passed to the other party. But since you are still in possession, you have rights that there are some rules and regulations that you must abide with. So don't think that because you have a property, like for instance, you can't do any legality on it. You can't, if you do any legality, police can come. You can't sell drugs. You can, there are a lot of things that type, but those are the far extreme situations. But it's that once you buy a property, before it used to be the ground rent. If you had under the Lagos State scheme, there was a ground rent. But after then, it's now land use. Those days it used to be called tenement rates. I don't know if you heard that word before. Landowners used to pay tenement rates. They say, oh, we have it. But now it's all just land use charge. It's simplified. Every year you get an assessment. The landowner goes to goes there, makes his payment, and is issued a receipt for that year. So I know there's a land use act, except the other things Lagos State government is coming up with. But if you buy a property, for instance, if you want to do your governor's consent, it's not free. You must go to the Lagos State Government Lands Bureau, do an assessment. Once you finish your assessment, you pay XYZ to government. Once that is done, your consent will be processed. Once it's ready, even to issue a C of O, there must be financial implication. You must pay to Lagos State government before they issue C of O. So those are the not complications. Those are the things guidelines you must follow once you become a property owner.
Okay, so I know you've said something close to this before, right? But I just want like a more elaborate answer. So if something goes wrong, in a situation where something goes wrong, maybe a dispute or like an ownership issue or fraud, that what options does an investor actually have? And how long do you think these things realistically take to be resolved?
Well, most times you are once there's a dispute of ownership, the best thing is to approach the court of law. When you approach the court of law, once you approach the court of law, once you have land ownership disputes, everything else, if parties have proper documents to prove, they will approach the court of law. Once they approach the court of law, then the court of law will take its step. Parties that are aggrieved. But you know, at times some people stay away from litigation. They don't want to be engulfed in any long litigation battle because at times, as you said, time frame is funny. You can't have a time frame at times. Maybe a litigation time frame can be a year or less than a year. Some can go for 2 years, three. It really depends on the parties involved. Some people try to resolve via alternative dispute resolution, maybe mediation, arbitration, all those other things, other ways are given to an aggrieved party. So there are places and people you can approach once you have a situation with your property. If it's a fraud allegation, or maybe someone has taken away fraudulently or with force or menace, you approach the Nigerian police force to write a petition to invite the parties. And if they find that the parties be found, anybody found wanting will be arraigned and charged to court. So there are processes like that. There's the criminal aspect, there's the civil aspect of it.
All right. So I think at this point, I'm going to say thank you very much for being our very first guest. It's been a very insightful conversation, and I personally have learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching has also been able to get a thing or two. So, yes, this is
Thank you.
exactly the kind of conversations that we are here for, and we're glad to have you as our first guest to kick it off. So, thank you so much, and for everyone watching, thank you
But
for staying
I,
with us to the
I
end.
um I enjoyed this, and I think anytime you guys invite me again, I'll make myself available, and
Oh, we look forward
we
to
can
having
still.
you again.
This is just a synopsis. There's other places where we can also delve into, and I know the public would, or whoever is watching or listening, I'm sure they'd have had some few ideas today. Okay, so this is what happened. So that's fine. Thank you very much, Bukola. Thank you for having me.
Thank
I
you
hope to hear from you guys again.
for doing this with us. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope that you enjoy watching this as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you think should see it. Bye for now.